It began with one woman, just one. On a warm summer day in 1518 in the narrow stone streets of a quiet European town, something strange happened. Without warning, without music, and without reason, she started to dance. At first, people thought it was harmless, maybe even amusing. But what followed would turn into one of the most disturbing and unexplained events in human history. The town was Strasbourg, a place known for its markets, churches, and simple daily life. Nothing like this had ever happened there before. The woman, known in some records as Frau Trophäa, stepped into the street and began moving her body in a rhythmic, almost frantic motion. There was no musician, no celebration, no festival, just her dancing alone. Hours passed. She didn't stop. People gathered around her, confused at first, then concerned. Her movements were not graceful or joyful. They were erratic, almost painful. Her face showed signs of exhaustion, yet her body refused to rest. It was as if something had taken control of her. As the sun began to set, she was still dancing. By the next morning, she was still dancing. Now fear started to grow. This was no longer entertainment. This was something else. Something no one could explain. The local authorities were called. Physicians came to examine her, but they found no clear illness, no visible injury, no logical explanation. Instead, they reached a conclusion that seems almost unbelievable today. They believed her blood was too hot. In the medical understanding of that time, an imbalance in the body could lead to strange behaviors. Their solution? They didn't try to stop her. They didn't restrain her. Instead, they encouraged it. Yes, they believed the only way for her to recover was to keep dancing until the illness left her body. And so a stage was built, and then professional musicians were hired to play. And what started as a single woman dancing alone slowly turned into something much bigger. Within days, others began to join her. At first, it was just a few people, then dozens, then hundreds. Men, women, young, old, all dancing. Not for joy, not for celebration, but as if they had no control over their own bodies. The streets filled with people moving uncontrollably, their feet pounding against the stone, their bodies shaking with exhaustion. Some screamed, some cried, but they couldn't stop. The town had never seen anything like it. The sound of footsteps replaced the normal noise of daily life. The rhythm of chaos echoed through the streets. People collapsed, only to get back up and continue dancing. Others never got back up at all, because something terrifying had begun to happen. The streets grew silent as people were dying. Not from violence, not from disease in the traditional sense, but from pure exhaustion, from heart attacks, from strokes, from bodies pushed beyond their limits. And still, they danced. The authorities, instead of stopping the madness, made it worse. They believed more space would help, so they cleared halls, built platforms, and even organized what can only be described as forced dancing zones. Musicians played louder, the rhythm continued, and the number of dancers grew. At its peak, it is believed that over 400 people were caught in this uncontrollable frenzy. Imagine walking through a city where hundreds of people are dancing. Not smiling, not laughing, but suffering. Their faces pale, their eyes empty, their movements desperate. Day turns into night and night into day, yet the dancing never stops. Families watch their loved ones slowly lose themselves. Children saw their parents collapse in the streets. Friends tried to hold each other still, but failed. Because whatever this was, it was stronger than human will. Days turned into weeks. The death toll continued to rise. And still, no one understood why. Some believed it was a curse, a punishment from God. Others thought it was the work of evil forces, something supernatural that had taken over the town. The church became involved, offering prayers and rituals, hoping to bring an end to the madness. Eventually, a new decision was made. The dancers were taken to a nearby shrine, dedicated to Saint Vitus, a figure believed to have power over such strange afflictions. It was thought that by bringing the afflicted there, by performing certain rituals, the curse could be lifted. And slowly, something changed. The dancing began to fade. One by one, people stopped. Some collapsed into deep sleep. Others woke up confused with no memory of what had happened. The streets, once filled with chaos, slowly returned to silence. But the damage had already been done. Dozens of people were dead. Hundreds were traumatized. And an entire town was left with a question that would echo through history. What really happened? There was no poison found, no clear disease identified, no logical explanation that could fully account for such a widespread and intense event. Even today, historians, scientists, and researchers continue to debate the cause. Some suggest mass hysteria, a psychological phenomenon where fear and stress spread rapidly through a group, causing physical reactions. Others believe it could have been caused by a fungus, something that contaminated food and led to hallucinations and uncontrollable movements. But none of these theories fully explain the scale, the intensity, or the deaths. Because this wasn't just people acting strangely, this was people dancing until they died. And perhaps the most disturbing part of the story is not just what happened, but the fact that something similar has happened before. Not once, not twice, but multiple times throughout history. Events where groups of people suddenly lose control, where reality seems to break, where human behavior becomes something unrecognizable, which raises a chilling question. If it happened before, could it happen again? And then, just as suddenly as it began, it started to fade. One by one, the dancers collapsed. Some fell into deep sleep that lasted for hours, even days. Others woke up confused, unable to remember how or why they had been dancing in the first place. The streets that had once echoed with endless footsteps slowly fell silent again. But the silence did not bring relief. It brought questions, because no one could explain what had just happened. The people of Strasbourg tried to return to normal life, but nothing felt the same. Families had lost loved ones. Friends had watched each other collapse from exhaustion. And those who survived were left with something even more disturbing than physical pain: the memory of having no control over their own bodies. Officials quietly tried to move on. Records were minimized, details were softened, and in some cases, completely erased. The last thing the authorities wanted was panic spreading to other regions, because if word got out that an entire town had been overtaken by something no one could understand, it could trigger fear far beyond their control. But some accounts survived: fragments of letters, medical notes, witness testimonies, and through these scattered pieces, a chilling picture begins to form. A picture that becomes even more unsettling the deeper you look into it. Because the more we try to explain it, the less sense it makes. One of the most widely accepted explanations today is something called mass hysteria, a psychological phenomenon where fear, stress, or belief spreads rapidly through a group of people, causing real physical reactions. It sounds logical at first. After all, the 1500s were a time of extreme hardship. Disease, famine, and constant fear of divine punishment shaped how people saw the world. But there's a problem with this theory. Mass hysteria might explain why people started dancing, but it doesn't explain why they couldn't stop. It doesn't explain why their bodies kept moving for days, pushing past exhaustion, past pain, until some of them collapsed and died. So another theory emerged. Some researchers believe the cause may have been a toxic fungus, something that contaminated the grain people ate. This fungus, known to affect the nervous system, can cause convulsions, hallucinations, and uncontrollable movements. In theory, it could make people act in ways that seem completely irrational. But again, something doesn't add up. If the food supply was contaminated, then why didn't everyone in the town get affected? Why only specific groups of people? And more importantly, could any known toxin really force someone to dance continuously for days without stopping? The human body has limits, and yet, during those weeks in 1518, it was as if those limits didn't exist. Which brings us to the explanation that many people at the time truly believed: that this was not an illness, not a toxin, but a curse. In a deeply religious society, the idea of supernatural punishment was not unusual. Many believed that Saint Vitus, a figure associated with strange afflictions, had the power to curse individuals with uncontrollable movement. This belief was so strong that authorities eventually took the dancers to a shrine dedicated to him, hoping to break whatever force had taken hold of them. And strangely, after that, the dancing began to stop. Was it coincidence? Was it psychological? Or was it something else entirely? Even today, no one can say for sure. But what makes this story even more disturbing is that it wasn't the only time something like this happened. There are other recorded cases throughout history where groups of people suddenly began acting in ways that defy logic. Episodes where behavior spreads like a virus, where reality itself seems to shift, and where individuals lose control in ways that science still struggles to explain. Which raises a terrifying possibility. What if the dancing plague wasn't just a random event? What if it revealed something deeper about human nature? Something we still don't fully understand. Because when you strip away all the theories, all the explanations, and all the historical context, one fact remains: hundreds of people danced, and some of them danced until they died. Not because they wanted to, not because they chose to, but because something made them, and that something has never been identified. Think about that for a moment. In a world where we believe we understand the human body, where science explains almost everything, there is still a case where an entire community lost control, suffered, and died without a clear cause. And maybe the most unsettling part is not what happened in 1518, but what it suggests. Because if something like this could happen once, if fear, belief, or an unknown force could spread so deeply that it overrides human instinct, then what's stopping it from happening again? Today, we like to think we are different, more advanced, more aware, but human psychology hasn't changed as much as we think. We are still influenced by each other, still affected by fear, still capable of reacting in ways we don't fully understand. So the real question is not just what happened in 1518. The real question is, if it started again, would we even recognize it? Or would we just become a part of it without realizing until it's too late?